Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Kevin Colley. I'm a sports contributor for the Portsmouth Daily Times, and I also work with the Gene Bennett Baseball Classic with Shawnee State University. And I'm here with former Red scout, former minor league player for the Reds, your very own Gene Bennett. Been a long-time member of the Reds for 58 years, and spent 52 years and 6 years as a minor league baseball player, then 52 more years in various roles. I'm well known, obviously, as a scout. Scouted players and found players, drafted players for the Reds, such as Barry Larkin, Chris Sabo, and Paul O'Neill. And Don Gullett, obviously, yes, a South Shore, Kentucky native who came from McKell High School, and which eventually became Greenup County High School. So, Mr. Bennett, just talk about the classic, and just talk about what you're looking for as it comes together in the next couple of days.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the idea of the Gene Bennett Baseball Classic came about 7 years ago, and that was brought about by my good friend Jeff Brown, Rich Rowe, Ron Slusher, some guys like that. And baseball in general has kind of went backwards in this area for the last several years.
Mm-hmm.
And the thinking was that if we would bring teams in here that was top in the country,
Mm-hmm.
high school age players, Legion age players, these are all young players.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it would kind of perk up the interest in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the number one goal of the Gene Bennett Baseball Classic. And then, after we got into the thing, we found that I know a lot of these teams that comes in here, I've either scouted their managers now or signed some of them. I know a team from Cleveland's in here. I signed the
Mm-hmm.
manager. He's a right-hand pitcher, a good pitcher. And we had a lot of contacts all over the country, even in Latin America, with players that I had been associated with in baseball. And the thing has grown to be a big tournament, and we've had great players that's come in here.
Mm-hmm. Just talk about, way you started out, graduated from Weaversburg High School in the 40s, and then you got took a couple years, but then you got into the minor league system with the Reds. I believe you're in Daytona Beach, correct?
Yeah, well, the way when I was in high school, things have really changed
Oh yeah.
since the 1940s.
No doubt.
And once we played our 9 or 10 high school games,
Mm-hmm.
if we were lucky, and a lot of times we didn't even had 2 baseballs to play the whole game with. Lucky if we had 2. And then after that, I started playing after I got out of high school with like Ramey Feed was the first independent team that I played with, which went to the national tournament 2 or 3 times with them. And it was an unlimited age, but I was an 18-year-old playing with 25-year-old guys. And but anyway, it was fun. And then later on, years later, after I'd banged my shoulder up and couldn't play no more, I came back and I played with Deemer's Market. And then too, after I played with Ramey's, I went to Huntington and played.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the Reds. Well, we had a team in Portsmouth called the Philadelphia Athletics.
Okay, right.
A professional team.
Right.
And they were going to sign me,
Mm-hmm.
but my father had been pretty bad off at the time.
Oh yeah.
And they sent me a contract. In fact, I've got the copy of the contract.
Wow.
And it's not like it is today where they give you millions.
Right.
And I got the contract, and I decided because of my dad's health, and I'd never been away from home,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't sign that contract. But then I went on and played up in Huntington,
Mm-hmm.
and the Reds came in then, and Buzz Boyle was the scout for the Reds,
Mm-hmm.
and he saw me play up there, and that's when I signed with the Cincinnati Reds.
Mm-hmm.
And it went on, and you'd never believe that in 1952, when I signed with the Cincinnati Reds, that would last for 58 years.
Yeah. Well, and then like you said, you played for 6 years in the minors, and then you hurt your shoulder, and you couldn't play much.
I played from 52 up through the 57 season.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I hurt my shoulder about the 55 along in there, 4
right.
3, something like that. And I thought it would get better, and they did too, and it didn't work out that way. So in 1957, after the season was over, I told the Reds that I wasn't going to play no more because I couldn't throw well enough, and I knew what you had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was starting to even bother me by swinging the bat, and that was one of my big pluses.
Mm-hmm.
And with me being a left-hand hitter and my right shoulder messed up, that was a problem.
Yeah.
And so they told me that, look, before that happens, let's sit down and talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the idea came up about either
Class D
manage
managing
a team in a Class D league,
right.
in a New York Penn League,
mm-hmm.
or they might hire another scout or two.
Mm-hmm.
And after I come home and talk to Mr. Rickey,
right.
I ran it by him, and he said, well, let's put it this way. If you take that managing job and you don't have good players,
mm-hmm.
you ain't going to win, you're going to get fired.
Yeah.
Now, if you take the scouting job and you work hard at it, and you do a good job, you might have a job for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So I called the Reds the very next day and said, if that job for scouting's open, I'll take it.
Yep.
And that's the way it kind of went. And then I scouted up until 1975, and then I was a scouting supervisor from 1975 up until 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And then from 1990 or 91, and then from 91 up until I retired in 2010, I was the assistant general manager.
Okay.
So 58 years went by pretty good.
Yeah, and with the talent, that you got, Don Galt was well on his way to a Hall of Fame career, had a career ERA of 3.09 and had 109 wins to 55 losses. And then Gary Larkin is a Hall of Famer. Chris Sabo and Paul O'Neill are well known for their hustle on the field and their gritty play. Some of the talent you signed is quite remarkable.
Yeah, and in Cincinnati, they get in Scouts Alley.
Mm-hmm.
They got a big mural. I got a big mural in there, and then also they've got my top 20 players that I signed, like Jeff Russell and Charlie Lieber. I signed Charlie in June. He pitched in the big league in September. He wasn't too bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I say. But Charlie was a good pitcher, and Jeff Russell pitched in 3 or 4 All-Star games, and I was lucky to get a lot of players that were really talented players. But I had a lot of people that helped me too. I had a lot of bird dogs, they called them,
Mm-hmm.
and those guys would kind of point them out to players I need to see, and I'd run all over the country and watch them.
And what did you think of the years that you were with the Reds when the big red machine was going on, all the hype surrounding that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and of course Gillett.
Mm-hmm.
I signed Gillett in June. He pitched the big leagues now, right?
Yeah.
He could have went right from high school to big league.
Yeah.
In fact, Don Gillett is probably one of the greatest total athletes I ever saw in my life,
Mm-hmm.
because he was a basketball player
Right.
that Adolph Rupp recruited.
Right.
He was a football player that could have went to Southern Cal at that time or anywhere he wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And of course he was a baseball player that was a big leaguer in high school.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just, again, talk about from 75 to 90, with those 3 titles in those years. That's a good stretch, especially considering how small of a market Cincinnati is. Now it's the smallest market in the major leagues. That's quite an accomplishment for a franchise, that doesn't have necessarily the fan base or the crowd or the town total population like Boston or New York.
Right.
That's quite an accomplishment and speaks a lot.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And too, during that span right there, the Reds, I think, probably had the best scouting staff in all of Major League Baseball. In other words, not only myself was bringing great players to the Reds, other guys like Tony Robel that signed Johnny Bench, and you can keep right on naming them off, the Bartons, and right on down the line. Everybody was bringing in one or two really quality players that went on to be a star in the big leagues.
And then, unfortunately, you got to talk about some players that you did scout and then that weren't drafted. Such as Derek Jeter. Obviously, it's a talent that you scouted heavily, and then they ended up drafting Chad Matala, and he was a good minor leaguer,
Right.
but Derek Jeter obviously got drafted the very next pick and the sixth pick overall pick by the New York Yankees and went on to his stellar career of his own, obviously.
But all the years I scouted, that was the biggest disappointment I ever had, because I'd gone up to Jeter's house the night before the draft and worked a deal out with him, because when you looked at the draft list, and we were like fifth, I think.
Yes, right.
You knew who the first team needed, and you knew who the second team needed, and down the line. But none of them needed a shortstop.
Right.
So if you got to thinking about that, our chances to get him, you could say, we're going to get that guy. He's going to be there. And so Jim Bowden had me go up there and work a deal out with him. And I did. And then we come back and, well, the signals got messed up somewhere there, and we didn't take him. And he'll be a first ballot Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And he's a great guy.
Talk about just your final years with the Reds and how that went, how that evolved.
Well, the last actually from 1990, when I was maybe the assistant to the general manager, my role changed.
Right.
In other words, I really wasn't out there scouting like I was before. I would go maybe and see a player or two that we might have in mind or something like that. But mostly I would look at all of our minor league system, check them all out, and then I was the advanced scout for quite a while. Where, like that we were going to play the Dodgers, I'd get in there and see those Dodgers play 4, 5, or 6 days before we played them. And say, pitch this guy this way, and do this, do that, And I did that, and then anything that they asked me to do, you might say, scouting, whatever it was, you just do it.
And since your career's ended, but even before that, you've taken a vested interest in your hometown and given back to Wheelersburg. Obviously, you're a contributor to their Little League program, and that says a lot. And you can tell the success from that with the 6 straight trips to the Final Four. I mean, that really says a lot about where the program's come from.
When you have, it's like a farm system. When you have 600 boys and girls playing in a Little League program from age 4, some of those is going to end up quality players. Right. And I think as long as we can keep this program going, I think the school, as far as the softball and the baseball, should be real competitive.
Softball is too. They
Softball
just made it to the Final Four for the second time in school history this year.
And that'd been great to see them both win the state championship.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And too, we got that Challenger League, which is I say the Wheelersburg Little League has got that Challenger League, which is really that really was something that they started. It was really a good thing. And you say, well, how can someone that has a handicap play? Well, that's really not the idea, how good they can play.
It's that they are playing.
They are playing. They play as good as they can possibly play. and no one plays any harder than they play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really encouraging to go up there and just watch those guys play.
Finally, what is your advice to the players and the coaches that are participating in the Gene Bennett Classic this year? What do you want to say to them?
Well, I talk ever since we've had the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I have personally sat down with every team in the tournament.